The morning sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds, casting a pattern of lines across the worn wooden floor. Jason sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor as if it held the answers to questions he had never dared to ask. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, a sound he usually ignored but now seemed louder than it had any right to be. Today, everything felt heavier, as though the air itself was pressing down on him. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m. His routine had always been simple: wake up, rush through a quick breakfast, grab his laptop bag, and catch the 7:45 train to the office. Another day, another spreadsheet, another meeting that felt more like a performance than actual work. But something inside him had shifted overnight, a quiet restlessness that refused to be ignored. Jason's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He picked it up, expecting the usual notifications, emails from colleagues, a text from his mother checking in, but instead, it was a message from an old friend he hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, remember that idea we joked about in college? Still think about it?" Jason frowned. He remembered. They had spent endless nights talking about starting something together, a business, a project, a life that didn't exist yet but felt possible. Life had happened, though. Jobs, bills, responsibilities, it all piled up, leaving that dream buried under practicality. He dropped the phone back onto the bed and leaned against the wall, trying to shake off the sudden surge of memories. A part of him wanted to ignore it, to continue with the predictable rhythm of his life. But another part, louder than ever, whispered that this could be the moment he had been waiting for. Without even knowing it, Jason stood and walked to the window. The street below was waking up, people hurrying along the sidewalks, cars honking, the city alive with movement. He imagined himself among them, blending in or standing out. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he had a choice today, a simple decision that could break the cycle he had been trapped in for years. His heart raced as he turned back to the bed, picked up the phone, and began typing a reply. Each word felt like a small rebellion against the life he had come to accept as inevitable. He paused, rereading it, feeling a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Pressing send, he knew there was no going back to the way things were. For the first time in years, Jason felt awake, fully awake, as though the fog that had dulled his senses for so long was finally lifting. The day stretched before him, uncertain and bright, filled with possibilities he had once thought were reserved for other people. And in that moment, he understood something fundamental: life could change in a single instant, with a single decision. The reply was sent, and the screen blinked back at him with an almost mocking emptiness. Jason stared at it for a moment, heart still racing, unsure if he had done the right thing. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and just when he began to wonder if the message had been a mistake, his phone vibrated again. A simple notification, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. "Let's meet today. 10 a.m. coffee at the corner cafe?" Jason exhaled sharply, a mix of relief and anxiety swirling inside him. 10 a.m. was less than 3 hours away. He looked around his apartment, at the boxes he had never unpacked, the clothes that had lost their shape, the books gathering dust on the shelves. Everything seemed suddenly insignificant. The world outside the window had not changed, yet he felt as if he were seeing it for the first time. He showered quickly, dressing in the clothes that had once felt comfortable but now seemed like a costume. As he walked to the cafe, the city unfolded around him in a series of small miracles: the smell of fresh bread from the bakery, the laughter of children playing on the sidewalk, the way sunlight caught the windows of the buildings, scattering tiny fragments of light across the street. For the first time in years, he noticed these details, and they made him feel alive. At the corner cafe, his friend was already waiting, animated, eyes bright with the same energy Jason remembered from college. They embraced awkwardly, as if trying to bridge the years of silence with a single gesture. The conversation started cautiously, stories exchanged in fragments, laughter mingled with pauses, until gradually, the old rhythm returned, and ideas began to flow. By the time they left the cafe, they had a plan: small steps, but real steps towards something bigger than the monotony that had consumed Jason's life. He felt a strange exhilaration, as though he had been standing in a dark room and suddenly someone had opened the window. The fear was still there, gnawing in his stomach, but it no longer paralyzed him. Instead, it pushed him forward, reminding him that growth always required risk, walking back to his apartment, Jason felt lighter, as if the walls he had built around himself for years were starting to crumble. Every decision he had made up until now had led him to this moment, but it was the one he had just made, the simple choice to reach out, that now felt like the true beginning. That he paused at the corner of his street, looking up at the sky, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs. A smile crept onto his face, tentative at first, then broader, as if acknowledging a promise to himself he had never dared to make. Today, nothing would be the same. Today, a single choice had set the course for the rest of his life. And for the first time, Jason was ready to follow it wherever it might lead. The following days felt like a whirlwind. Jason woke each morning with a strange mixture of excitement and apprehension. The plan he and his friend had sketched over coffee was taking shape, but the reality of turning an idea into something tangible was far more daunting than he had imagined. Emails needed to be sent, calls returned, and decisions made, small, seemingly insignificant choices that now carried a weight he had never felt before. That he found himself standing in front of the mirror one evening, brushing his teeth, staring at his own reflection. The man staring back at him looked the same, yet somehow different. There was a fire in his eyes, a sharpness in his posture, a sense of purpose he hadn't known he possessed. He realized that the simple decision he had made had not just opened a door, it had shifted something deep inside him, altering the way he saw the world and himself, but progress was never smooth. That afternoon, a call came from an unexpected source, a potential investor interested in their project, but skeptical, blunt, and demanding more than Jason felt prepared to give. His hands shook slightly as he listened, carefully noting every question, every doubt. He had a choice: retreat, find safety in the familiar, or rise to the challenge and push forward despite the fear gnawing at him. Jason took a deep breath and spoke, voice steady despite the storm inside. Each word was deliberate, carefully considered, yet filled with a quiet conviction he didn't even know he had. The conversation stretched on, tension building and easing in waves, until finally the investor said, "All right, I'm in, but only if you deliver. No excuses." The line went dead, and Jason sank into his chair, exhausted, exhilarated, and terrified all at once. Walking home that evening, the city felt different. The streets were the same, the buildings unchanged, but he was no longer the same man who had sent a message weeks ago. Every step he took felt intentional, every breath meaningful. He realized the truth he had ignored for years: growth was messy, unpredictable, and uncomfortable, but it was also the only path to something greater. At his apartment, he dropped his bag and sat on the floor, staring at the walls. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and risks that could undo everything he had worked for. Yet for the first time, uncertainty didn't frighten him, it thrilled him. He understood that life wasn't about avoiding failure, it was about choosing to move forward anyway, no matter how small the steps might seem. Jason smiled, a slow, steady smile that reached his eyes. A single decision, seemingly simple, had altered the trajectory of his entire life. He didn't yet know where this path would lead, but he was ready. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. And in that readiness, he felt an unshakable sense of freedom, a freedom earned not by luck, but by courage. Months had passed since that single message changed everything. Jason sat in the small office he had once only dreamed of, sunlight streaming through the window and catching the edge of the desk where papers, notes, and sketches lay scattered. The project that had seemed impossible was now real, thriving in ways he had never anticipated. Every challenge, every sleepless night, had brought him here. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the office, phones ringing, colleagues talking quietly, the hum of computers, wash over him. It was not a life free of difficulty, far from it. But it was a life alive with purpose, with possibility, and most importantly, with his own hand guiding it. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. His friend stepped in, holding 2 mugs of coffee, a grin spreading across his face. "You've done it," he said simply. No applause, no fanfare, just recognition, the kind that meant more than any accolades could. Jason took the mug, warmth seeping into his hands, and smiled back. "We did it," he corrected gently, feeling the weight of shared effort and trust. It wasn't just his courage that had carried them forward, it was the partnership, the willingness to take risks together, to face uncertainty without retreating. Looking out the window, Jason saw the city bustling as it always had, but now it looked different. He saw possibilities in the streets, in the people hurrying past, in the world that seemed enormous and intimidating, yet somehow inviting. He realized that life would always present choices, crossroads where one path seemed safe and another uncertain. But the difference now was that he knew the power of saying yes, even when fear threatened to hold him back. That he took a deep breath, savoring the moment. There would be more challenges ahead, more decisions that could shape or shake his future. But Jason no longer feared them. Each choice was a chance, each risk a doorway, and he had learned that the smallest decisions could echo in ways far beyond imagination. As he turned back to his work, he felt a quiet certainty. The life he had once accepted as ordinary, predictable, and unremarkable was gone. In its place was a life built on courage, persistence, and the willingness to act, even when the outcome was unknown. That simple decision, the one he had almost dismissed, had not just changed his life, it had transformed him entirely, and in that transformation, Jason understood the most important truth of all: the future was not something that happened to him. It was something he could shape, moment by moment, choice by choice, decision by decision. For the first time in his life, he felt completely, undeniably free.